Well, welcome back to the Seth Leibsohn Show. It is a delight and privilege to welcome back to the show guest line Congresswoman Debbie Lesko, representing Arizona's 8th Congressional District, and as I like to add, a lot of common sense as well. Congresswoman Lesko, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Seth.
You betcha, you betcha. All right, well, what do we say? Another day, another indictment. I've read it twice, the 45 pages. Summer reading, I suppose. And it's hard to walk away from reading that indictment and think that you're reading something other than the attempted criminalization of political speech. Really, that's really the way I see it. It's hard to see any other way. And it's hard for me to assess how, if you're going to go after a former president of the United States who happens also to be, I mean, if that weren't enough, he also happens to be the leading opponent of the incumbent president of the United States in an upcoming presidential election, two major issues, you're going to want to have something more than an experimental or novel theory of law, it seems to me, Debbie. But how do you take it? How do you read it? And what are your constituents saying?
Well, I too read the indictment, and I read parts of it over again, and I was very disappointed in that a special counsel would indict him over his claims.
Yeah.
First of all, when I read it, it seemed like the entire indictment hinged on the special counsel's allegation that Trump knowingly spread false claims of election fraud.
Right.
And then the prosecutor, Jack Smith, goes in and says his alleged proof that Donald Trump knowingly spread these false claims was that all these different people told him that there wasn't proof of, this election fraud. Right. The thing that it doesn't say is all of the other people, including some of his own attorneys, that said there was evidence of election fraud.
Right.
So you can't prove that somebody knowingly is spreading lies just because somebody tells Trump, oh, I don't believe that. Yeah. Well, so what? Yeah. Other people told him they did believe it, and other people showed him what they believed was evidence of election fraud. So, to me, the whole thing is baseless. And then you go on to some of the very biased language that the special prosecutor, Jack Smith, had. And, he would put in parentheses things like he would call that, Attorney Eastman's theory about having the alternate electors. Yeah. What did he call it? He called it a criminal. Let me look it up. I don't know. He called it some derogatory thing, saying it was a criminal manipulation, and he put it in parentheses.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he would add adjectives. Yeah. He would add adjectives in front of things like the corrupt something, the criminal something, as if him saying it makes it true, which is, I just thought it was extremely biased. I thought it's bogus. I do not think that the DOJ can prove any of this stuff, and so I thought it was really bad. Now, the indictment on the Mar-a-Lago thing, I thought that was more, I guess, well written. We haven't heard Trump's rebuttal to that one yet, but that one was at least more well written. This one, it just seems like some propaganda that's been put out by the Democrat Party, and that he's just trying to prove some stuff. It's to me, I was very disappointed that our Department of Justice was proceeding with this and went on ahead with. Every time I tried to turn the page and kept reading on, I'm like, surely they have something else. So
surely there's something more, right? You're waiting for a dog to bark, and it doesn't. Right, yeah, it would be as if, I guess, if you hired me as your advisor and you hired, I don't know, pick someone, Karl Rove, I don't know, just to pick a name as your advisor, and I said one thing, and Karl Rove told you something 180 degrees otherwise, and you relied on his advice rather than mine, and you were indicted for not believing me. That's kind of what we're going with here. And I got to tell you, too, Congresswoman, I mean, you know the president, I don't, and the former president, and I don't. But I've watched enough rallies, and I've watched enough interviews to say no one with two eyes and two ears can look at or listen to that man and credibly think he actually believes he didn't win the 2020 election. You cannot say he knew that he was spreading lies about fraud. You cannot listen to that man and think that that's what he thinks. You just cannot possibly do it. It's insane to me that this Jack Smith special counsel is trying to graft beliefs onto Donald Trump that he so clearly doesn't hold.
Yeah, it is incredible. So, like I said, I think the whole indictment crumbles because it's entirely based on that his allegation, Jack Smith's allegation, that Trump knowingly lied, like that Trump believed that the election was perfectly fine, which is really hard to believe.
Laughable.
Like
it's laughable to think that he thinks that. You may think one way, I may think another way on it, but it's laughable to think Trump thinks it. Yeah.
Right. And then the other thing, I mean, the way that Jack Smith wrote this thing was just like so biased because in one part he put, what did he put? Let me read it. It says on page 3 of the indictment, it says, Trump enlisted conspirators, you know, basically to
in other words, lawyers.
And I'm
other words, lawyers.
He hired lawyers. Co-conspirators are lawyers.
Right.
Since when is hiring lawyers a crime?
Right.
You know, this is just insane. I think
guess
it's
Hillary
totally
hired co-conspirators.
insane.
I guess Hillary hired co-conspirators, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, you have this timeline, which is very suspicious, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so on June 7th, the FBI releases documents to Congress alleging the Bidens took a $10 million bribe from Burisma Energy Company in Ukraine, right?
Right.
That's June 7th.
Right.
And then June 8th, the next day, Jack Smith, the special counsel, indicts Trump on the Mar-a-Lago documents case.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
One day later.
Right.
Then July 26th, Hunter Biden goes to court and rejects the sweetheart plea deal after, you know, the judge says to the DOJ, are you going to continue investigating them? And, you know, they said, yeah, we are. And then, you know, Hunter Biden's people go, what? Wait, I thought we had a wink, wink, nod agreement here. Right. And so they reject the deal. And then on July 27th, the very next day, Jack Smith again adds more charges for Trump in the Mar-a-Lago case. Now we fast forward to July 31st. Hunter Biden's former business partner testifies to Congress that Joe Biden was on over 20 calls with his son's business partners and said that we had the brand and all this stuff. And the very next day,
son of a gun,
Jack Smith indicts Trump again. And I was like, what the heck? This is extremely suspicious.
Oh, it's more than suspicious, Debbie. I'm glad you're on it, though. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you checking in with us. Debbie, it's always good to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You betcha. Congresswoman Debbie Lesko, representing Arizona's 8th Congressional District.